You never forget your first night working security. Most people expect boredom, quiet hallways, and long hours staring at empty buildings. I expected the same thing when I started my first shift as a mobile security guard. What I didn't expect was to be trapped inside a dark medical clinic at 1:15 in the morning with someone hiding in the building, someone who was clearly watching us. And the worst part? We had no idea where they were. This happened only a few days ago, and it was my very first night of training as a mobile security guard. For those who don't know, a mobile security guard doesn't stay in one place. Instead, we drive between different locations throughout the night, checking buildings and responding to alarms whenever dispatch calls us. That night, I was riding with a supervisor who was teaching me how to handle patrols, write reports, and respond to emergency situations. At the time, I thought the job would be simple. Quiet buildings, empty parking lots, nothing but routine checks. But around 1:15 a.m., we pulled into the parking lot of a small pharmacy and medical clinic in Mississauga, and almost immediately, we realized something was very wrong. I had been working for my security company for about 6 years, long enough to earn seniority over most of the other guards. Over time, I had completed more training courses and certifications than many of the newer hires, which meant my supervisor usually let me pick the shifts I preferred. Normally, I avoided overnight shifts whenever possible. I liked working mornings or evenings and keeping my weekends free. But when our company picked up a contract guarding a large government building, things started to change. The building itself was strange. I won't reveal the exact location, but imagine a massive 6-story structure sitting almost completely alone in the middle of nowhere. Surrounding the building was a huge parking lot, and around that lot stood a 10-foot metal fence topped with thick barbed wire. There was only one entrance and exit, connecting to a narrow side road about 3 miles away from the nearest highway. Beyond the fence, there was nothing but dense forest stretching for miles. No houses, no stores, no streetlights, just trees. During the day, we usually had 3 guards on duty. On weekday nights, there were 2 guards. But on weekend overnight shifts, Friday through Sunday, only 1 guard was assigned to the building. And recently, nobody wanted that shift. Within a few months, we started losing overnight staff. People kept quitting or transferring. Because of that, my supervisor asked if I could help cover the weekend overnight shifts for a while. At the time, I needed the overtime money because I was planning to move into a new apartment soon, so I agreed. For the first couple of weeks, nothing unusual happened, but the third weekend was different. That night, there was a violent thunderstorm. Heavy rain hammered against the windows while lightning flashed across the dark sky. Around 2 a.m., I was sitting alone in the CCTV control room on the 6th floor. The room had 3 large monitors displaying all the camera feeds throughout the building and parking lot. There was also a window overlooking the rear side of the lot. Like most quiet overnight shifts, I had the lights off and was passing time watching downloaded movies on my phone while occasionally glancing at the cameras. After sitting for a while, I got up to stretch and walked over to the window. Through the blinds, I could see rain whipping across the parking lot. Then lightning flashed. For a split second, the entire forest beyond the fence lit up, and I saw something. A dark figure quickly moving between 2 trees. The distance between them was at least 20 feet. I froze, staring into the darkness, waiting for another lightning strike. A few seconds later, the sky flashed again. This time, there was nothing. I convinced myself my eyes were playing tricks on me. Maybe I was just tired. I left the window and went down the hall to grab an energy drink from the vending machine. When I returned, about 5 minutes later, I immediately noticed something strange on the monitor. One of the camera feeds was gone. Specifically, the camera covering the back parking lot, the same area outside the window. I walked back to the window and looked toward where the camera was mounted. The camera was hanging loosely from its wires, swinging in the wind.
I assumed the storm must have knocked it loose, so I logged the issue in my report and went back to watching my phone. A few minutes later, the building security system made a loud alert sound. Someone was entering a secured area. I opened the access log on the monitor. The entry point being used was the back door near the parking lot. My stomach dropped. Whoever it was had entered the correct code, which meant the system showed a green access confirmation. But that didn't make sense. If it were an employee or contractor, we would have been notified ahead of time. And if another guard was coming in, I would definitely know about it. I reached for the desk phone to call the police. The line was dead. Then I checked my cell phone. No signal. At that point, I decided to walk down the hallway to see if I could get reception somewhere else in the building. I stepped into the hall. Just then, the power went out. The entire building went black. Since I was close to the stairwell, I decided to quietly head downstairs and get outside to my truck. Inside the stairwell, it was nearly pitch black. I moved carefully down the steps, but I realized something troubling. If someone had cut the power, they were probably in the generator room, and the generator room was located in the basement. Unfortunately, the basement was directly below the lobby, the same direction I was heading. When I reached the 4th floor, I suddenly heard a door open below me. Then heavy footsteps started climbing the stairs. My heart began to pounding. I knew I was armed, but the truth was I had never actually been in a situation where I might need to shoot someone. Instead, I quickly changed my plan. I turned around and began quietly moving back up the stairwell toward the 6th floor. Near the top of the stairwell was a ladder leading to a hatch that opened onto the roof. My plan was to climb the ladder and hide in the darkness above the hatch until the person left. But as I turned around, my gun accidentally struck the metal railing. The loud clang echoed through the stairwell. The footsteps below stopped. Then, suddenly, they started running upward. I sprinted up the stairs as fast as I could. Just before reaching the top, I quickly opened the stairwell door and slammed it shut, hoping it would make the intruder think I had run into the hallway. Then I climbed the ladder. Seconds later, the man burst through the door and ran into the hallway, believing I had gone that way. The moment the door closed behind him, I jumped down from the ladder and ran down the stairs again. He must have heard the noise because I heard the door slam open behind me. The chase began. Both of us were sprinting down the stairwell. I managed to stay about 1 floor ahead of him the entire time. When I reached the lobby, I heard a loud crash behind me, followed by a cry of pain. It sounded like he had fallen. I didn't wait to check. I ran outside into the storm and dashed to my truck. Just as I jumped inside and started the engine, I saw him. Dressed completely in black, with a hood and mask covering his face, he burst out of the building and ran toward my vehicle. I slammed the truck into drive and sped out of the parking lot. Only when I reached the main road did my phone finally get a signal. I called the police immediately. When they arrived, we searched the entire building and surrounding area, but the intruder was gone. However, in the stairwell, they found something he had dropped when he fell. A loaded, unregistered semi-automatic handgun. To this day, no one knows why he broke into that building. And honestly, I'm just grateful I got out of there alive.
A few years ago, I worked night shifts as a security guard in a medium-sized corporate office building in New Jersey. Most nights were incredibly quiet. After the employees left, the building would become almost completely empty, leaving only the hum of the air conditioning and the soft glow from the security monitors in the lobby. My job during those shifts was simple. I monitored the cameras, performed routine patrols through the hallways and parking areas, logged any incidents, and basically stayed alert in case anything unusual happened. Most of the time, nothing ever did. But one night changed the way I looked at that job forever.
It was around midnight when the last employees had already left for the day. The lobby was empty, and the only light in the room came from the rows of security monitors in front of me. I was casually checking each camera feed like I normally did: hallways, elevators, entrances, stairwells, and finally the underground parking garage. That's when I noticed something strange. A figure was moving slowly between the parked cars. At first, I thought I must be mistaken because the garage should have been completely empty at that hour. Only employees with special 24-hour access could enter the lot overnight, and I knew none of them were scheduled to be there that night. I leaned closer to the monitor. The man was wearing a long, dark coat that looked too big for him. He moved slowly between the rows of vehicles, almost like he was searching for something. But he wasn't approaching any particular car. He wasn't heading toward the exit either. Instead, he just wandered between the vehicles, occasionally pausing and looking around as if he were checking whether anyone was watching. Something about the way he moved made me uneasy. I couldn't explain why, but my instincts were telling me something was wrong. I picked up the radio and contacted my supervisor, explaining what I was seeing on the camera feed. He told me to stay at my desk and keep monitoring the situation. But the feeling in my gut kept growing stronger. Eventually, I decided to go check the garage myself. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the elevator. The ride down felt unusually long. Each floor the elevator passed seemed to echo loudly through the shaft, and I could feel my nerves building as I approached the garage level. When the doors opened, I stepped out and scanned the area with my flashlight. The garage was completely silent. Rows of parked cars stretched out in front of me, but there was no sign of the man I had seen on the camera. "Security!" I called out into the empty space. My voice echoed through the concrete structure, but no one answered. I slowly walked between the rows of vehicles, shining my flashlight into every dark corner and checking behind the pillars. Nothing. No movement, no footsteps, no person. After several minutes of searching, I began to think maybe the camera had malfunctioned, or maybe the lighting had created some kind of shadow illusion. So I returned upstairs to the lobby. When I sat down and looked back at the monitor, my stomach immediately tightened. The man was there again, standing in the exact same spot where I had seen him earlier. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had just been down there moments ago, and there was absolutely no one there, which meant one of two things. Either he had somehow hidden from me the entire time, or he had been watching me. I radioed my supervisor again and told him what was happening on the camera feed. He instructed me to keep monitoring the cameras and avoid confrontation unless absolutely necessary. For the next 20 minutes, I watched the man slowly walk across the garage. Eventually, he began moving toward the stairwell that connected the garage to the main building. He stopped near the door and looked over his shoulders several times. Then he disappeared from the camera view. I quickly checked every other camera feed in the building: the hallways, the elevators, the stairwells, the lobby, but there was no sign of him anywhere. That's when I heard the elevator ding behind me. The doors slid open. There was no one inside, but when I looked down at the polished lobby floor, my heart nearly stopped. Wet footprints. Bare footprints. They led out of the elevator and across the lobby floor. The prints looked fresh, like someone had just stepped out moments ago, which made no sense. It was freezing outside that night. Whoever had walked through the lobby had apparently removed their shoes. I immediately called the off-site patrol team for backup, but while I waited, I felt an overwhelming urge to confirm what was happening. So I took the elevator up to the 5th floor to perform a patrol. The hallway was dim and silent.
I walked slowly, shining my flashlight along the walls and checking each office door. Halfway down the hall, I noticed something unusual. One of the office doors was slightly open. That door should have been locked. I carefully pushed it open and aimed my flashlight inside. The room was empty. Just a desk, a computer monitor in sleep mode, and a chair tucked neatly underneath. I stepped back into the hallway. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Heavy, wet footsteps moving quickly along the tile floor. My heart jumped into my throat. I spun around and shined the flashlight down the hallway. For a brief moment, I caught sight of a dark coat disappearing around the corner at the far end of the corridor. The man wasn't running, but he was walking quickly towards me. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. He had been following me, staying just out of sight the entire time. I ran. I sprinted down the hallway toward the stairwell door. The sound of those wet footsteps followed close behind me, echoing loudly through the corridor. I slammed into the stairwell and pulled the door behind me. Then everything went quiet. The footsteps stopped. I sat there on the stairs for several minutes, trying to slow my breathing and convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. When the patrol team finally arrived, they found me shaking and pale. We searched the entire building together, every floor, every room, every corner of the garage, but there was no sign of the man anywhere. Even stranger, when we checked the camera system, the footage from the garage during the time he appeared had been corrupted. The recording simply skipped over that entire period, like it never happened. I quit that job less than a month later. To this day, whenever I walk through a parking garage late at night, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, because sometimes I still feel like someone is walking behind me, just out of sight.
This incident actually happened only a few days ago, and to be honest, it was one of the most terrifying nights I've ever experienced. It was also my very first shift working as a mobile security guard in training. For anyone who doesn't know, a mobile security guard doesn't stay at a single location. Instead, we drive between different properties throughout the night, checking on buildings and responding to alarms whenever dispatch sends us to a location. In my case, the company covered several areas around the Greater Toronto area. That night, I was assigned to ride along with a supervisor who was training me on how the job worked. He was a pretty relaxed guy, only a couple of years older than me, and he spent most of the night explaining how to complete patrol reports, check alarm systems, and respond to emergency calls. Usually when we visit a site, it's because an alarm has been triggered and dispatch asks us to investigate. But that night was different. Around 1:15 a.m., we were scheduled to perform a routine patrol at a small pharmacy and medical clinic building located in Mississauga. There had been no alarm. We were simply stopping by to make sure everything was secure. When we pulled into the parking lot, the place looked quiet and empty, just like we expected. But as soon as we stepped out of the vehicle, my supervisor suddenly stopped walking. Something was wrong. The underground parking garage door was wide open. Even worse, the main entrance door to the clinic looked like it had been forced open. My supervisor stared at the broken door for a moment and muttered, "What the hell? If someone broke in, the alarm should be going off." Since it was my first time at the location, I didn't really know what to expect, but I could already feel my stomach tightening with anxiety. We approached the entrance carefully and stepped inside. The building was completely dark and silent. Then my supervisor pointed toward the elevator. "Look at that," he said. The elevator display was lighting up as it moved between floors. We watched as the numbers changed. G, 1, 2, 3. Then it stopped at the 4th floor, the top floor of the building.
I looked at my supervisor. "Do you think someone's inside?" I asked. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he slowly pulled out his baton. Then he nodded. At that moment, my heart started racing. I could feel adrenaline rushing through my body as we stepped into the elevator. Neither of us spoke during the ride up. As the elevator passed each floor, I kept imagining the door opening and someone suddenly rushing toward us. When the elevator finally reached the 4th floor and the doors opened, no one was there. The hallway was dark and silent. Then my supervisor turned on the lights and began checking the rooms one by one. My supervisor told me to stay close to him. Even he looked nervous now. "Stick with me," he whispered. "If someone's here, we'll deal with it." We slowly searched every room and hallway on that floor, but the entire level was empty. Just when we were starting to relax a little, we heard it. Footsteps coming from the stairwell. The sound echoed clearly through the hallway. Someone was moving downstairs. My supervisor immediately walked toward the stairwell door, ready to open it and confront whoever was inside. But before he could reach it, the footsteps suddenly stopped. The building went completely silent. All we could hear was our own breathing. My supervisor quickly grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, we need immediate backup," he said. His voice sounded tense. "There is someone inside the building with us. They're downstairs, possibly hiding and waiting for us." Dispatch told us to stay where we were and not approach the suspect until backup arrived. But waiting felt worse than searching. My supervisor started pacing nervously, which honestly made me even anxious. He was supposed to be the experienced one, but it was clear that even he was shaken by the situation. Trying to calm him down, I said, "Don't worry, backup will be here soon." The problem was we couldn't simply run outside. Whoever was downstairs could easily hear the elevator moving and wait for us at the bottom. If they were armed, we could be walking straight into an ambush. So we stayed on the 4th floor and waited. About 15 minutes later, we finally heard the main door open downstairs. Then a voice echoed through the building. "Security?" It was our senior supervisor. My supervisor quickly radioed him. "We're upstairs. Be careful. There's someone in the building." A few minutes later, the senior supervisor joined us. After explaining everything, the 3 of us began searching the building together. We checked the stairwell first, then the hallways, then every room on every floor. But strangely, there was no sign of anyone. It was as if the person had completely disappeared. Finally, we reached the 3rd floor and started checking the offices. That's when we heard the front entrance door slam open, then footsteps running outside. We rushed downstairs as fast as we could, but by the time we reached the lobby, whoever had been inside was already gone. We searched the parking lot and surrounding area, but there was no trace of them. To this day, I still don't know how that person managed to hide from us for so long. Maybe they found some perfect hiding spot, or maybe they slipped out while we were searching another floor. Either way, it was easily the most terrifying experience I've had in this job. And the worst part? This weekend, I'm scheduled to visit that same building again, except this time, I'll be doing the patrol alone.